Good Saturday evening, everybody. I'm meteorologist Tim Pandajis here with your Atlantic tropical update, and now we're talking about major Hurricane Sam. The most recent update is up to a Category 4, and it's not done strengthening. Today is September 25th, 2021. All right, let's take a look at the Atlantic hurricane season by the numbers. Until the end of the season, November 30th, we have 65 days, over 2 months to go, and we've already got 19 named storms. Only 8 other seasons since the mid-1800s have had that many storms or greater. Look, since the turn of the century, 5 of them occurred since 2000. And 4 of the hurricanes so far this year, with there been 7, 4 of them have been majors. The most recent addition is, of course, Sam. So here's a look at our 2021 names. Out of the 21 original names, we've only got 2 left. In fact, since we last spoke yesterday afternoon, we had a sneaky little subtropical storm develop in the North Atlantic, not impacting land, but it did get a name, and that's Teresa, and that leaves 2, Victor and Wanda. What happens if we run out of these lists, these names? Last year, we went over to the Greek alphabet. That's only happened twice, 2005, 2020. No longer using the Greek alphabet. There's a supplemental list, 21 names here, and you can see them will likely tap into these with only 2 names left on the original and 2 months left in the season. All right, here's a look at Sam. I got a 24-hour loop on this because it went from a Category 1 hurricane yesterday to a Category 4. It has rapidly intensified. Winds right now 140 miles per hour, and we're looking at it here on infrared satellite imagery. This allows us to view it 24 hours a day. We have visible, of course, when the sun is up, but this gives us the temperatures of the cloud tops, and that's very important in gauging its intensity, especially when we're way far out in the Atlantic and just getting aircraft recon in the system today. So we've had to watch this from the eye in the sky for the past several days, and we do that with many hurricanes. It's nothing unusual. So here's the advisory stats showing the rapid intensification. By the way, the definition is an increase in sustained winds by at least 34 knots or 30 knots, around 34, 35 miles an hour. We certainly did that. Category 1 to a Category 4. Yesterday at 4 p.m., 85 mile an hour winds, Cat 1, pressure of 986. Today at 4 p.m., 140 mile an hour winds and a 43 millibar drop. Notice the correlation with a lower pressure and higher wind speeds. Now, Category 5 gets up to 156 and beyond that. And there is a possibility we could certainly see this strengthen further and become the strongest storm of the season. Right now, it's ranked number 2 of our top 4, our major hurricanes so far this season. Ida is the strongest. Sam, though, not far behind, 140 mile an hour winds. Ida topped out at 930 millibars, 150 mile an hour winds right before landfall, as you remember, in Louisiana. Then we've got Larry and Grace, the other 2 majors that topped out as Cat 3s. All right, here's a look at it again on the infrared satellite imagery. We'll kind of analyze what's going on here and diagnose what possibly is going to be going on further and giving a prognosis of the forecast going out from here. Very cold CDO. Now, what's that? Central dense overcast. Very strong thunderstorms surrounding the center. Now, cloud top temperatures, which we can see with the infrared satellite imagery, dropping to negative 70 to negative 80 degrees Celsius. Extremely cold. That tells us that they extend up to a very high altitude. The convection, the cloud tops, are stretching high up into the troposphere, getting close to the tropopause, the boundary up above the troposphere. Now, it's also got a warm eye. The eye has warmed and cleared out, and for a time today, on visible satellite imagery, the high res was able to see through the eye and see the ocean's surface. I'll show you the visible coming up here, but the sun is down now, so we're just going to get the last couple glimpses of it. The warming eye is between 10 and 15 degrees C. The eye itself, not very large, 14 to 15 miles in diameter, gauging at it from satellite imagery. Now, the average eye size is between 20 and 40 miles in diameter. Smaller eyes typically correspond with stronger winds and a stronger storm overall. The system isn't a very large one, but it's packing winds within this convective cluster here, the CDO, of over 140 miles an hour. Gusts higher than that, certainly, especially in the northeast quadrant. The good news is that this storm is nowhere near land, and that's what we'd like to see. It's over 800 miles away from the Windward and Leeward Islands, and there is encouraging model trends that I'm going to show you in a minute that does take this clear north of the leewards and sparing any land, at least for the next 5 to 7 days. It may be an issue for Bermuda as we go a little farther out in time. So I mentioned that we're just getting aircraft flying recon missions into the storm now. They're staging out of St. Croix in the U.S. Virgin Islands. and they're flying into the storm. They've been pretty constantly in the system for the last few hours, or really pretty much of today. They're flying two types of missions. Ones that are penetrating the actual system, and other ones that are upper air, flying around the system and above it to get a gauge of what the environmental conditions are like. And all that data is put into the computer models to get a better feel for what may happen going forward. Now you can see the most recent mission here making a pass through the northeast quadrant, clocking a wind speed 114 miles per hour. I've seen some of the raw data coming in much, much higher than that, and there are some indications here that we could see this approaching high-end Cat 4, maybe borderline Cat 5, especially as we go forward with the overall conditions very, very conducive for more strengthening. All right, here's a look at the visible satellite. You see it going dark because the sun's going down on the system, but in the last few images, you can see that clear, warm eye, and as I mentioned, the high res was able to look down and see the ocean surface there. And that typically happens when you get a very strong storm. The center of the storm, the eye, clears out, and if it was over land, you'd be able to see the blue sky, you'd be able to go outside with calm winds, and then you get the backside of the storm that reverses the wind direction, and it's not good to be in at all, but thankfully it's far out in the middle of the Atlantic right now. A quick look at the water vapor imagery here. Dry air, not really an issue. There's plenty of it to the northwest of the system, but you can see this storm is really kind of fending itself off of seeing any of that dry air penetrating the center of circulation and choking it off. So dry air not going to be a factor in any weakening that may take place. So here's the most recent track update as of 4 p.m. from the National Hurricane Center. Keeps it at a Cat 4, if not stronger, maybe a Cat 5. It's certainly within the realm of possibility. But further strengthening is expected, 150-mile-an-hour winds. That's where Ida peaked. Now, you need 157 or greater to be a Cat 5. It's possible, and we'll see that with the recon missions flying constantly in there and see if they gauge any winds stronger than that. Also take note of the movement here. Very slow over the coming days, only moving at 10 miles per hour right now. But that cone does steer clear of the northern Leeward Islands. Now, that doesn't mean much because things could certainly change, and this is just the center line here. The storm could track in the southern tier or the northern tier, and it's expected to stay within the cone 2/3 of the time. Also, you have to keep in mind that the effects of a storm are felt well outside of the cone. So even though we're going to be outside the cone here in the northern leeward, you're still probably going to get some gusty winds and maybe some outer rain bands. Here's the encouraging model trends. This is the spaghetti plots here, and each line you see is a different computer model, giving its own rendition of what it thinks may play out. So this is yesterday's computer models, the spaghetti plots, and then look what happened today. Much better consensus, and most of them are shifting farther to the north and east, away from the northern leeward. However, within this cluster to the north, where there's much less consensus, is Bermuda. And Bermuda has had to deal with some storms in the past, especially last year and this year, so we'll have to watch that closely as we get farther out in time. I mentioned effects felt well outside of the cone, and here's the possibility of seeing at least tropical storm force winds, which is 39 miles per hour or greater, and you see the northern leewards are in that 20 to 30 percentile chance of getting some of those winds. So rather low, but the risk is there, and that will be adjusted based on how large the storm gets, how large the wind field, and of course the final storm track. All right, let's look at the global models, the GFS and the European. You're looking at the GFS in yellow, the European in red. The lines, all the squiggly lines on your screen, well, those are isobars and lines of equal pressure. Now, when they're tightly packed and closed off, we have a center of circulation, and when they're tightly packed, you have a tight pressure gradient, meaning a stronger storm, stronger winds. See, the GFS is already diagnosing a very strong storm, as Sam is. Euro is a little bit lagging there, but they both bring it to be a Cat 4, high-end Cat 4 here as we head into Monday. And notice in that time frame, it doesn't travel very far. It's moving slow. 10 miles per hour now, expected to slow down further in the next 12 to 24 hours. Northern Leeward Islands, both models keep it to the northeast. However, Euro is a little bit farther southwest. This is the earlier model. It hasn't updated yet. It'll likely fall a little more in line with what's going on with the GFS. And then there, right there, if you can see it, that's Bermuda. Here we are next Friday, so a lot of time between now and then, but we've got major hurricane likely still, Sam, getting very close to the island. European takes it right over. GFS passes it well to the east, and that's a big change too, because there was a run last night that showed a little bit of a threat with the GFS for the east coast. Still needs to be watched, still can change, but just goes to show you the trend is looking better as we go forward in time into next week. So why is that storm Sam turning to the north a little bit sooner. Well, a stronger storm, as you saw with the infrared, those cloud tops extend very, very high. When you get a strong storm like that extends to high altitudes, it can sense the upper level steering pattern a little bit better. So here we are with the jet stream winds, 34,000 feet up, so where jet airliners fly. At the end of the forecast track here at Thursday, 1 p.m., this is as far out as the 5-day cone goes, here's the upper level pattern at that point. We've got an upper level low sitting over New England. And what that's doing is pulling the winds in out of the south. You can see the strong winds in the jet stream to the north of the system. And this storm at this point is farther out. It's probably around here. So it can sense those winds pulling it to the north. We've got a ridge over here that's been building and pushing it to the west for its lifetime so far. But there's going to be this weakness developing. And it's going to sense that and be able to get dragged to the north, steering it clear, most likely scenario, of the eastern seaboard. Until then, though, strengthening expected because of the conditions in place. Very warm sea surface temperatures, the skin of the ocean in the mid-80s, and those warm waters extend down to a depth. Now, what comes into play here, too, with a slow-moving storm, we saw this with Larry, is that it tends to plateau. When it's slow-moving, it upwells the ocean, so it's mixing up the waters, and the warm waters are replaced with cool waters from the depth. But when you've got the warm waters extending down to several 150 meters, you're mixing up just relentlessly warm water. But with Larry, you can actually see that here. It took out some of the warm ocean waters. It extracted the energy. That may come into play here. We may see this plateau as a Cat 4. Larry plateaued as a Cat 3. It's a possibility, but not set in stone. And then up to a Cat 3 as it heads over the warm waters, too. In fact, here's a look at the sea surface temperature anomalies. You can still see the sea surface temperature scar from Larry. It was slow moving over this area. This red line is its track. It extracted the heat energy, kept it at a major Cat 3 for like 3 or 4 days, I think it was, and it lowered the sea surface temperatures. However, Sam, moving not over that same area, so it's not moving over the wake of cooler waters, it's moving over untapped, deep, warm water, so endless amounts of fuel. So my final thoughts here, encouraging model trends. If they continue, Sam would spare the Leeward Islands. That's good news. Have to watch it for Bermuda, though, by the end of next week. Minor shifts will be amplified in the longer range forecast. So minor shifts, if it tracks a little farther south, a little farther north, the track in the long term will be adjusted in a larger direction. And we're not done. There are other signals in the longer range models of other waves developing. In fact, Sam's not the only game in town. We've got what's left of Teresa, not a worry. Another tropical wave here south of Teresa, north of where Sam's going to track. And then another tropical wave here coming off the coast of Africa, an African easterly wave. Heading into the main development region, it looks like another wave has popped up out in front of that. This wave here is going to be one to watch, and this is what the models are liking, too, for developing here in the long term. 0% in the next 2 days. However, medium to almost high chances, 60% within the next 5. All right, that's the latest update on Sam. If things change and we get an update, maybe to a Cat 5 later on this evening or early tomorrow, we'll bring you another update then. But you can always contact me on social media, Twitter, Instagram, and on Facebook. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.